every American citizen, whether it's green card holder or American citizens.
I can only speak to the parameters of this arrangement, which is these 5 wrongfully detained Americans in exchange for 5 Iranians, and of course the transfer of these funds. That's the parameters of this deal. That's all I can talk about. I can just assure you that, as I said at the top, we're always going to take seriously the case of wrongfully detained Americans anywhere they are in the world and do everything we can to get them home.
Can you confirm that the administration policy is never to pay ransom to any terrorist organization, i.e. non-state actors, whether it's Al-Qaeda or Daesh or whatever? In the past, Americans were killed as a result because the U.S. did not pay money while Europeans did to release their citizens.
No change to our policy.
Well, absolutely. So how is this different, considering that you describe Iran as the state that sponsors terrorism in the world? So in other words, that you differentiate between a state and non-state actors, and therefore you deal with them differently?
I've answered that question. This is not a ransom payment.
Danny,
Yes.
welcome to the briefing.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the question. I wanted to ask about the UN General Assembly next week. Firstly, is the President going to be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel there?
No meetings to speak to at this point.
And also, I just wondered if you know if he's going to be, the President will be attending the Security Council meeting on Ukraine.
Again, we'll have more towards the end of the week in terms of laying out the calendar and the President's agenda at the UN General Assembly next week. I think on Friday we'll have a lot more detail for you. President's looking forward to it. This is a terrific opportunity to start to reinforce some of the things that you saw him reinforce on this trip in terms of improved infrastructure and investment in the global south and developing nations, looking towards human rights, solving climate change. There's an awful lot on the President's agenda up there in New York, and he's very much looking forward to it. We'll have more detail at the end of the week.
Thanks. Just to follow up on Shirini's question on Russia and North Korea, I'm wondering if you could speak to what the administration's concerns on what North Korea could get out of this. Putin seemed to suggest that that Russia would help North Korea build spy satellites. I'm wondering if there's concern around that or missile technology.
Look, again, we got to see what actually shakes out of this meeting and the degree to which any kind of an arms deal is consummated, what that looks like. It's just, I don't want to speculate. But in a similar fashion to the concern we already expressed about the burgeoning defense relationship between Iran and Russia, we obviously have concerns about any burgeoning defense relationship between North Korea and Russia. Again, it remains to be seen what either side, A, wants out of this, and B, will get out of it. These are not two countries that work well with others, and they don't really have all that much trust and confidence in each other. So we'll have to see. But certainly, any arrangement that would improve North Korea's military capabilities would be certainly would be of significant concern to us.
Hi. So do you have a time frame for when the Americans are coming back? And what is the administration's message to the people? Because this is happening on the first anniversary of mass killing, where the administration said that they are going to be standing by side of the Iranian people. And they are very critical of this money being transferred to Iran. They are actually calling it appeasement. So what is the message of administration to those people who lost their lives in the aftermath of mass killing, and also do you have a time frame for?
Well, we continue to mourn with the Iranian people for her loss. We held the morality police accountable for it, and others in Iran. We continue to stand with the Iranian people, and for their human and civil rights. That's not going to change. The timing here is the timing, and it wasn't tied to any anniversary or any date. It was tied to an arrangement that we had made with Iran to try to get these Americans home. And the notification of the movement of these funds was the next critical step in this process. A process, I would remind you, is not over. They are still in Tehran, our Americans. They are not home. And so we're going to be a little bit careful about how much detail we're going to provide here publicly. And your first question about timeline, I don't have a time frame that I'm at liberty to speak to right now, but we hope to get them home as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you.
Me? Okay. I hear you really emphasizing and laboring the point that getting Americans home is the priority of the administration. I wondered if there was any movement on the Pennsylvania native teacher Mark Fogel, who's been held in Russia in a prison for, I believe, going on 2 years now. Has there been any movement on getting that American home?
I don't have anything with respect to his case to speak to today.
Go ahead, Nancy. Thanks. What can you tell us about the 5 Iranian prisoners who are being traded? What were they convicted for here in the U.S. and how were they chosen?
I'm not at liberty right now, again, because this is an ongoing process and we don't have our Americans home yet. So I will be careful about how much detail I put out there. I don't have a lot that I can say about these 5 individuals at this time. We will certainly have more information to share when it's appropriate to share it. In general, without getting into each specific case, just generally speaking, you're looking at offenses such as sanctions evasion, that kind of level. But I think that's as far as I can go today.
So not serious, hardened criminals?
Largely in the realm of sanctions evasions, and I think I'm just going to have to leave it at that right now.
The Iranians have shared the names with us. Are you prepared to release the names?
We will at the appropriate time, and this is not the appropriate time.
Hey, John. I've got 2 for you on China. We reported last week about China trying to ban iPhones for certain government agencies. Now they're saying they are seeing security threats with these phones. They're stopping short of issuing laws, but we have reported on the internal guidance, and the president even mentioned it in Hanoi, saying, you know, they're changing the rules of the game. Should we expect the administration to respond and there be repercussions for China if they do go through with that?
I don't want to get ahead of where we are right now. We're watching this with concern. Clearly, it seems to be of a piece of the kinds of aggressive and inappropriate retaliation to U.S. companies that we've seen from the PRC in the past. That's what this appears to be. But the truth is we don't have perfect visibility on exactly what they're doing and why, and we certainly would call on them to be more transparent about what they're seeing and what they're doing.
So it's accurate to say that you are trying to seek that information from the Chinese?
We're watching this as closely as we can. I'm not gonna get into diplomatic conversations, but it's concerning.
Okay, and separately but related, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, has been pretty candid on Twitter talking about China and Xi Jinping's policy of disappearing officials in his cabinet. Is this something that you guys are aware of, or, you know, endorsing his message to be as forthright? I mean, the White House has been pretty careful in how you do diplomacy with China, which is not really poking Xi Jinping the way the ambassador is.
I'll let the ambassador speak to his social media account. We've long been clear about our concerns about a full range of worrisome PRC activities in the region there, and I think I'd leave it at that.
John, in the past couple of weeks, the president has lied about being at Ground Zero the day after the September 11th attacks, falsely claimed he saw the Pittsburgh Bridge collapse, claimed his grandfather died in the hospital days before his birth. What is going on with the president? Is he just believing things that didn't happen did happen, or is he just randomly making stuff up?
The president was deeply touched and honored to be able to spend 9/11 with military members there in Alaska and some families. And was honored by their presence and the chance to make an important set of remarks about why we need to continue to remember that day. And he did that. And he spoke about a visit to Ground Zero, which he did participate in, about a week or so after the event. And what that looked and what that smelled and what that felt like. And it had a visceral impact on him, as it did so many other Americans on that terrible day. And he's focused on making sure that an attack like that never happens again, which is why we've improved our over-the-horizon counterterrorism capability and why we continue to hold terrorist networks accountable. And it's why he spent so much time last week shoring up our national security interests in a vital part of the world on issues that aren't necessarily tied to terrorism, but very much tied to our ability to secure peace and prosperity there and around the world.
He's had a string of saying things that happened, things that are easily debunked. Why does he keep doing that?
The president was grateful to spend that time with those family members and those troops.
Has the Moroccan government accepted any earthquake assistance yet from the United States?
Well, I can tell you that we have been in constant touch with Moroccan officials, and that USAID has allocated $1 million to assist in response relief. I'll let USAID and the Moroccan government speak to how they intend to use that. I would also just, as the president did, reiterate that we stand ready to provide even more assistance should it be required and needed. But we are in direct contact with them about their needs, and obviously you want to do the best you can to meet those needs as they see them.
Okay, I'm just going to do two more. Way in the back.
Thank you very much. Admiral, why wouldn't the administration re-engage, if it would be possible, with the JCPOA?
Well, we wanted it to be possible. I mean, my goodness, the first couple of years of this administration, we worked hard to try to get us back into the JCPOA, and Iran kept larding up the negotiations with things that had nothing to do with their nuclear program, and we realized the futility of the effort. So we stopped putting energy and effort into it, all around the time that they were whipping and beating female protesters. So we held them accountable for that. That was a significant moment as well. Look, the president has been very consistent that we want to make sure they never achieve a nuclear weapons capability. He would vastly prefer to do that through diplomacy. But that's just not a viable option right now.
What is the administration's goal? Is it to defeat Russia, or is it ultimately to seek some sort of negotiated settlement?
Man, I don't know how many times I've answered this question in the last year and a half. And we have been, again, very, very consistent. We want to see Ukraine succeed on the battlefield. We want to see them get all their territory back. We want to see their sovereignty respected. We want to see no Russian troops inside Ukraine. We want to see the war end. And it could end today, obviously, if Mr. Putin would do the right thing and just get the hell out. That's clearly not going to happen right now. So we're going to continue to provide Ukraine with the capabilities that they need to be successful.
And on the holdup of military appointments from Tommy Tuberville, what is the tangible damage being done to the military by a holdup on appointments of military officers?
I can't say it any better than the leaders of the DOD have been able to say. You've got more than 300 now generals and admirals who are frozen, can't move, which means that in many cases, literally hundreds of cases, you've got officers that are doing two jobs, two big jobs, while they're still trying to maintain readiness, and readiness is starting to get affected by this.
All right, Kayla, you have the last question.
Thank you. CNN is reporting that Elizabeth Whelan, the sister of Paul Whelan, who was arrested in Russia in 2018, is in Washington for meetings this week, and she's been seeking a meeting with the president. Does the president plan to meet with her?
I don't have any meetings with the president to speak to, but she is in town, and she is going to be meeting with White House officials. It'll be a good opportunity for us to update her on our efforts to get Paul back, and those efforts are very active and they're very ongoing. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Karine. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Darlene, it's good to see you. I feel like it's been a while. Maybe?
Maybe.
All right, go for it.
Will the president cooperate fully now that Speaker McCarthy has pulled the trigger on an impeachment inquiry?
So I'm going to refer you to my colleagues over at the council's office on any specifics to the inquiry. Certainly not going to speculate on what has been a baseless inquiry that the House Republicans can't even really defend themselves, and that many House Republicans have said they couldn't support their own votes. So again, I'm going to refer you to my White House counsel on any specifics.
Sorry, and on the speech tomorrow, he's going to Maryland. Why is he going to Maryland, the blue state, instead of maybe a red state, to talk about his economic policies?
So not going to get, you heard Jerry, the chair of CEA, talk specifically about the economy, speak specifically about a major speech that the president's going to do tomorrow on Bidenomics. You've heard us talk about Bidenomics and how we believe has turned the economy around, and just not from us, but from the data that we certainly have seen. And this is a president has been very clear. He wants to see an economy that's built from the bottom up, middle out, and not the trickle-down economy that we see that congressional Republicans want to continue to do. Well, not going to get into
Well, I'll say this. The president, it doesn't matter where the president decides to give a speech, right? For him, it is an opportunity to speak directly to the American people, and that's what you're going to see him do. You know, whether it's in Maryland, whether it's in a red state, the president always takes those opportunities incredibly important, not just to speak in front of all of you who report on what he's going to say and how he's engaging with the American people, but directly to them as well. And so, you know, in this case, location doesn't matter. He wants to give a really important speech, a major speech, as you heard us coin it, on Bidenomics. And I think it's important. What's important is that the American people are going to hear from the president about an issue that matters to them, which is the economy, and how he continues to make sure he's doing everything he can to lower costs for the American people and to continue to build an economy that leaves no one behind. And I think that's what matters for tomorrow.
On impeachment, you just mentioned House Republicans' baseless claims. How confident are you that there will be no evidence that incriminates President Biden and Hunter's business dealings as this goes forward?
So let me just give a little bit of a lay down here, because I think it's important. Any specifics to the inquiry, certainly I want to say this at the top, as I said to Darlene, I'm going to refer you to my colleagues at the counsel's office. But I also want to be clear about a couple of things. You know, I just talked about Bidenomics. I just talked about what the president's going to do tomorrow, really deliver a major speech, something that the American people want to hear about. What are we doing to improve their lives, work on the economy? And these are real issues, real priorities for Americans. And like I said, like lowering costs. But what you see Republicans in Congress, right, they have spent all year investigating the president. That's what they have spent all year doing. And have turned up with no evidence, none, that he did anything wrong. I mean, that is what we've heard over and over again from their almost year-long investigation, and that's because the president didn't do anything wrong. Even House Republicans have said the evidence does not exist. The House Republicans have said that. To my friend in the back who just yelled at, which is incredibly inappropriate, but House Republicans have said that it doesn't exist. Their own investigation have actually debunked their ridiculous attacks. And the only reason Speaker McCarthy is doing this political stunt, and we have seen it, you all have reported, is because Majority Taylor Greene has said she threatened to shut down the government. Can you imagine shutting down the government over a political stunt? And we're talking about vital programs that American families need. And she said that because she wanted him to actually do this, and if he didn't, she would shut down the government. And you have Matt Gaetz as well, threatened to oust him as Speaker if he didn't do it. So he didn't even put up for a vote, as you all know, because he knows that even his own members weren't going to support this. So, you know, that's why we call it baseless. That's why I just called it baseless, because they have said themselves that there is no evidence. The evidence does not exist, and this is a political stunt. But here's the thing, and I say this all the time, we look forward to working with Republicans in a bipartisan way to actually deal with issues that matter to Americans, real issues that matter to Americans, not this baseless effort that they have continuing to do that shows no evidence.
Well, given that, will the president still be able to work with House Republicans, including Speaker McCarthy, to avert a shutdown in a couple of weeks?
I mean, look, the shutdown should not happen. That is Congress's job, to avoid a shutdown. I've said over and over again here at this podium just for the past couple of minutes that these are vital programs that American families need. So that's their basic duty. Their basic duty is to keep the government open. We've already agreed. We've agreed. There was a bipartisan agreement on how to move forward with the budget that they voted on. And so, look, a deal is a deal. They should keep their word, and they should keep the government open. Go ahead, Nancy.
You just brought up the lack of a vote. Does the White House view this impeachment inquiry as legitimate, given that there has not been a vote to open it?
So, Nancy, I appreciate the question, but I actually, from what I just laid out, Republicans haven't made it pretty clear just how illegitimate this is. They've made that very clear. This is an entire exercise of how to do this in an illegitimate way. And again, it's a political stunt, and it is going after the president politically, not about the truth. There's no truth here. And so we think they should work with us on legitimate issues, things that actually matter to the American people. And that's what they want to see. That's what the American people want to see. We're going to talk about Bidenomics. You're going to hear from the president speak to that directly. In a few minutes, the president's convening his cabinet, his cancer cabinet, to talk about an issue that matters to the American people, about saving lives, what else we can do to deal with cancer across the country. And, you know, that's what we believe.
So if you don't view it as legitimate, does that mean that the White House doesn't believe it needs to comply with requests that come as a result of this inquiry?
So look, I'm going to let the counsel's office, my colleagues there, speak to this directly as to what, when it comes to cooperating. I'm going to let them speak to that, but I've been very clear. We believe this is we're certainly not going to speculate on any baseless accusations, right? As we have seen from the Republicans in the House, and so you know, again, they could not even support their own votes. They couldn't. Speaker McCarthy could not even get support for this vote, and so I'm going to just leave it there.
Has the president had an opportunity to speak with Speaker McCarthy about the looming shutdown and potential ways out of this mess?
So I don't have any conversations the president has had with the speaker. I can say definitely that our OMB director here, Shalonda Young, and also the Leg Affairs office has been in direct communications for the past several weeks, even months, with members in Congress. That's going to continue. I just don't have anything to read out. As you know, the president is, you know, continues to have conversations with members in the House and the Senate regularly. I just don't have a specific conversation to read out.
Would the White House consider renegotiating the agreement it struck with Speaker McCarthy earlier this year?
Here's the thing. A deal is a deal. Like, they voted on this. They voted on this. It was a bipartisan deal. And, you know, they should move forward with what they agreed on. It was voted in the House, in the Senate, and Republicans voted for this, Democrats voted for this. So I don't see the issue here. They should move forward with this. Okay, John.
Karine, can you describe how President Biden reacted to the impeachment decision by the
I don't have anything to share about the president's reaction to this. All I can tell you is the president's focus on the American people, hardworking American people. You'll see him in a few minutes when he talks about when he speaks to his cancer cabinet, and then you'll certainly hear from him tomorrow with the Bidenomics.
You listed a couple things, the deal that the Republicans are now not supporting, obviously the impeachment. You say you look forward, or the White House looks forward to working with the Republicans. How do you see that happening? How does President Biden plan to work with Speaker McCarthy?
So look, for the past 2 years, this president has gotten a lot of criticism in not being able to work in a bipartisan way with Republicans on the other side of Pennsylvania. I mean, we've heard that over and over and over again, and he has been able to do that. And as you know, the political climate is tough. We're in a different political climate, probably one that we haven't seen in this fashion for some time. And the president has been able to do that. He's been able to push incredibly key, historic pieces of legislation that's going to change the lives of Americans. When you think about the bipartisan infrastructure law, you think about the CHIPS and Science Act, you think about the PACT Act, all important pieces of legislation. And that's just a few. There's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation that have been done in a bipartisan way that the president has signed this past 2 years. So it can still be done. It really, truly can. We're talking about this moment in time, right, that we're seeing from Congress. Of course, we're going to call it out. Of course, we're going to ask, as it relates to certainly the budget, of course, we're going to say to them that they need to do their jobs. And so we've seen it over and over again. Well, this president has been able to do things in a bipartisan way. And let's not forget, one of the things that we saw from the midterm results in 2022 is that Americans want to see this working in a bipartisan way so that we deal with their key issues that they're having. Bidenomics is going to be so important tomorrow. The president's going to speak certainly fully about that and lay out what his administration has done and going to continue to do, and that's what we're going to focus on.
Just really briefly on another topic, I saw the president's statement about Libya expressing condolences. Does the United States have plans to send more money, more help to the people there?
So a couple of things I do want to share are, as you mentioned, there was I think a tweet that went out. So our deepest condolences to all the families who have lost loved ones in the devastating floods in Libya and certainly the earthquake in Morocco. These are difficult times. And the United States sent emergency funds to relief organizations in Libya, and we will also send disaster assistance response to the region, an initial $1 million to support Libyan efforts. In the hours following the earthquake, we deployed a small assessment team to Morocco, and we are making available up to $1 million in initial humanitarian assistance to support people in the areas most affected by the earthquake and its aftershocks. Obviously, and certainly the United States stands by the Libyan and Moroccan people, and we are wishing them a speedy recovery to those injured and certainly sending our hope to all those who are missing loved ones. It is certainly a difficult time in that region, and we are here to help. Okay.
Thank you. On impeachment, does the President or the White House more broadly plan to comply with requests for information from House Republicans as part of the impeachment inquiry?
Well, I've stated a couple of times just in the past few minutes that any specifics, inquiries, or anything like that, that is something that that the council, my colleagues at the White House Council certainly will deal with, and any specifics, I would refer you to them.
You've suggested that there's no evidence to back up the Republicans'
Which is
effort
true.
here.
I'm not suggesting it. That's actually a fact.
If they are seeking information, would you
Again, that
provide
is
the
something that the
information?
White House Council is going to deal with, and it's not a suggestion. It's actually an actual fact. When you have Republicans saying that there is no evidence, it doesn't exist. They have said that. I mean, again, they couldn't even put it up for a vote because they didn't have the vote. So it's not a suggestion, it's actually the fact. That's their own words that I'm repeating back. I'm just going to try and go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. The LA Times reported that the Biden administration is considering forcing some migrant families who enter the country without authorization to remain near the border in Texas while awaiting asylum screening. Governor Abbott has threatened to sue if the administration goes through with this. Can you confirm whether this is under active consideration?
So I have to go back to the team. I want to get the right information to you. So let me talk to the team about that specific reporting, and then we'll certainly we'll have that information for you. As you know, the president has done everything that he can to work on an issue at the border that has existed for decades, to work to improve the immigration system. He's done that alone without the help of Republicans, and certainly you see the governor constantly doing political stunts, and the president's going to do everything that he can. Okay, one more. Try and call. I haven't called on you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. On the memo that was sent out to news organizations about covering this impeachment inquiry, can you give us some background into the decision-making and of why you thought sending that was necessary?
I'm going to leave that to the White House counsel from my colleague who sent that memo. Just laid out really kind of specifically as to how we see this process has moved forward, how there is no evidence. It's not even coming from us. It's coming from Republicans in Congress. We've been very clear about that. I actually think that memo lays out in pretty good detail of why we felt it was important to put that out. I'm just not going to get beyond what my colleague has shared with all of you. And with that, folks.
Can you explain why the president interacted with so many of his son's foreign business associates? More than half of voters told CNN they believe the president was involved and he lied. You can't have a response to that, Karine?